The day started with warmth in our hearts. I wore my best dress, even though it had been stitched twice. Adam polished his old shoes until they shined as if brand new. We had received an invitation from his family, a family gathering at the mansion of his father, Mr. Harold Greystone. It was rare for them to invite us, so we took it as a sign of peace. Maybe they had changed. Maybe they were finally ready to accept us. Adam was silent most of the way, his hand holding the handlebar of our old motorcycle tightly. "Are you nervous?" I asked. He smiled a little. "Just a bit." We arrived at the mansion and parked the bike near the big silver gate. The guards looked at us and whispered something while laughing. We stepped into the garden where laughter echoed and glasses clinked. People were dressed in suits and gowns. We stood there like stains in a painting. But still I smiled, because we came with love. Then we heard it, a voice behind the curtain near the hallway. I do not know why Harold even let that poor boy come. He is a stain to the Greystone name. That must be his wife too, wearing that cheap dress, as if it was silk. I held Adam's arm tightly, hoping he didn't hear it, but his grip on my hand told me otherwise. Another voice came from behind the large potted plant. Maybe they came to ask for money again, or maybe they want leftovers to bring home. The laughter that followed was sharp, like broken glass. Adam's jaw clenched, and he turned to walk inside. I stopped him. "Please," I said, "not here." But they kept talking. You know, if Harold had any pride left, he would disown them. Our family runs companies and brands, and he brings in his beggar son and his wife from the gutters. Do you think they even have running water in their home? Someone laughed again and said, "Maybe they wash in the rain." My heart cracked with every word. I looked at Adam, and his eyes were filled with pain and fury. Suddenly, a loud voice from inside called, "Everyone, the food is ready." We walked in, pretending we heard nothing. But the eyes were all over us, looking down at our clothes, at our hands, at our shoes. One of his cousins tapped another and said quietly, but not quietly enough, "Is that really a motorcycle helmet in his hand?" The other replied, "I guess that is their private car." They laughed again. I wanted to disappear. But Adam stood tall even when his shoulders felt heavy. He whispered to me, "I am sorry, Jenny. I am sorry I brought you here." I shook my head and whispered back, "No, I am proud of you." And that was how the night began, with broken hearts hidden behind forced smiles, and a silence that screamed louder than anything in that room. We sat at the very end of the long dining table. The silverware felt heavier than usual, not because of its weight, but because of the weight in our hearts. No one talked to us. They smiled at others, laughed, shared stories of investments and vacations. But when their eyes passed over us, they moved on like we were empty chairs. Adam looked down at his plate untouched. I placed my hand on his and gave a soft squeeze. He looked at me and tried to smile. From across the table, I heard Aunt Clara say loud enough for the table to hear, "I suppose some people are too proud to ask for help. They would rather eat crumbs than learn business like the rest of us." Uncle Richard chuckled and said, "Well, if pride filled stomachs, they would be kings by now." Everyone laughed again. I felt my face burn, not from shame, but from helplessness. One of Adam's brothers stood up to give a toast. He raised his glass and said, "To family, to success, to building empires, and to leaving behind those who slow you down." Some clapped. Others laughed. No one looked at us, not even Mr. Harold. He kept his eyes on his wine, as if we were ghosts. Adam stood up suddenly, his chair screeching. The sound echoed in the hall, silencing everyone. His hands were shaking, but his voice was clear. "Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for reminding us of our place. Because from this day on, I will build something greater than any of you ever have. You will remember this moment, not because you laughed, but because this was the last day you ever looked down on me." He grabbed my hand and we walked out. No one stopped us. No one called our names. As we stepped out into the cold night, the laughter returned behind us, Mocking, loud, painful. Our motorcycle waited like a loyal friend. As we rode away, I wrapped my arms around Adam. I felt his heart racing. Tears fell from my eyes, but the wind wiped them away before he saw. He stopped the bike near a bridge and turned it off. We sat in silence for a while, only the sound of cars below. Then he said, "Jenny, I will not let them win. I will not let them break me. I will rise, not for them, but for us." I nodded and whispered, "I believe in you." He looked at me with fire in his eyes. "No matter how long it takes, no matter how hard it gets, I will become a man they cannot ignore. And when they see me again, they will not laugh. They will bow." That night we went home with empty hands, but hearts full of burning purpose. And that was the real beginning. The next morning, the sun rose like any other day, but something had changed inside our small home. Adam woke up before dawn. He sat at the table with a notebook and a pen. His eyes were tired, but full of determination. I made him tea and placed it beside him. He looked up and said softly, "I cannot fail you." I smiled and said, "You never will." He began writing plans, ideas, goals, things he used to dream about, but never had the courage to chase. Now he chased them, like a starving man chasing bread. We sold the television and his old guitar. I took extra hours cleaning houses in the neighborhood. Adam found a job at a local repair shop during the day, and at night he studied online courses in finance and business. Every night he came home covered in grease, but his hands never shook. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "Just a little more. Jenny, just a little more." Our neighbors watched us quietly. Some laughed, some pitied, but we did not care, because we had each other, and we had a dream. One night, I came home to find Adam still at the table. He had drawn a business plan, a small workshop to fix and sell secondhand motorcycles. "I will call it Ride Rise," he said, "because I will rise through what they mocked me for." I nodded with tears in my eyes. "I know you will." We started saving every coin. No more eating out, no more small luxuries. Even when I fell sick from exhaustion, I told him to keep going. He did. Weeks passed, then months, until the day came when we had just enough. He rented a small garage at the edge of the city. It had broken tiles and leaking pipes, but he smiled at it like it was a palace. "This is where it begins," he said. He worked day and night, sometimes not even stopping to eat. He posted ads, taught himself marketing, learned how to negotiate. One evening he came home holding his first real profit. He showed me the money with a trembling smile. "Jenny, it has started." I hugged him, and in that moment, all the laughter, all the insults, all the pain became fuel for something bigger, something unstoppable. The workshop slowly came to life. It started with one broken motorcycle, then 2, then 5. Customers began to return. They told their friends. Adam's hands were always stained with oil, but his heart was cleaner than ever. He treated every customer with respect, even when they bargained hard, even when they doubted him. He smiled and kept going. I helped by keeping records and cleaning the shop. We shared meals on the cold concrete floor, but they tasted better than any feast we ever had, because they were ours, earned with sweat. One afternoon, a wealthy customer arrived in a black SUV. He stepped out wearing sunglasses and looked around with disgust. Adam welcomed him politely. The man said, "I heard you fix bikes." Adam nodded. "Yes, sir, I do." The man pulled out an old rusty bike from his truck. "Fix this and make it better than new. You have 1 week." Adam agreed without hesitation. For 7 days, he worked on it like it was gold. He replaced parts, painted the frame, tuned the engine. When the man returned and saw the bike, he was speechless. He handed Adam double the money and said, "You have talent. I have contacts. Would you be interested in a business deal?" Adam looked at me. I nodded. He smiled and said, I am ready. That was the first door that opened. Soon, Adam was partnering with garages across the city. He started hiring young men who had no jobs. He trained them, paid them well, and gave them a purpose. Our small home was still the same, but our hearts were rich. We never forgot the night we were laughed at. We never forgot the taste of shame. But instead of hate, we used it as our ladder. Each insult became a step upward. Each wound became strength. Every night Adam whispered the same thing. They will see Jenny. They will see what we have become. And when they do, they will realize that mocking the poor is the most expensive mistake they ever made. I held his hand and replied, "Let them see. We have nothing to hide, only everything to prove." 2 years passed like a blur. Ride Rise became a known name across the city. Adam now owned 3 workshops, each one run by people he had trained with his own hands. He had turned rust into gold and poverty into pride. I left my job as a cleaner and helped manage the business full-time. We moved into a small but beautiful house. Nothing fancy, but it had warm walls and windows full of sunlight. And it was ours. One evening while we sat sipping tea in our little garden, Adam received a call. His face turned serious. It was from his father, Mr. Harold Greystone. He was hosting another family gathering. And this time, he wanted Adam to attend. I watched the way Adam clenched his jaw. He asked quietly, "Did he say why?" I shook my head and said, "Maybe he knows now." Adam did not answer. He stared at the horizon for a long time. The next day we received a formal invitation, written in gold letters on thick white paper. I read it aloud. It would be held at the family estate again, the same place we were humiliated. This time Adam did not hesitate. "We will go," he said, "but not to seek their approval, only to show them that we became more than they ever believed we could." On the day of the event, we did not wear anything too grand, just a clean suit and a modest dress. But our eyes carried something richer than gold, peace, and strength. We arrived not on a motorcycle, but in a simple black car that Adam had bought in cash. People at the gate looked at us again. But this time there was no laughter, only silence. As we stepped into the mansion, the air felt different. The same walls, the same chandeliers, but this time we were not the same people, and they knew it. One of Adam's cousins approached us slowly. He looked nervous. "Hey, Adam, I heard you run a pretty successful business now." Adam smiled and said, "Yes, I do." The cousin scratched his head and said, "That is great, man. Really great." Others began to notice. Eyes that once looked through us now followed us, not with judgment, but with curiosity and something else, regret. Mr. Harold sat at the head of the table just like before, but this time when Adam and I entered, he stood up. Everyone turned to looks. His voice was calm but unsure. "Adam, Jenny, welcome." Adam nodded without emotion. "Thank you for the invitation." We took our seats near the middle of the table, no longer at the far end, like forgotten guests. The food was served, and the air was heavy. Some family members tried to make small talk. Others stayed silent, avoiding our eyes. Then Aunt Clara spoke. She stared at my dress, then looked at Adam. "So tell us, what is it you do now?" I heard something about motorcycles. Before Adam could answer, Uncle Richard leaned back and smirked. "Funny how bikes took you somewhere after all." Everyone chuckled nervously. Adam placed his fork down and looked straight at them. "I own Ride Rise. We have 3 branches, over 20 employees, and next year we are expanding to other cities." The laughter stopped. Uncle Richard coughed and looked away. Aunt Clara blinked as if trying to process his words. Then one of Adam's brothers leaned forward. "That is impressive. How did you manage all that?" Adam replied with no hesitation. "By remembering every word said to me at this very table. By using every insult as fuel. By working when others slept. By building when others mocked." There was a long pause. Then Mr. Harold finally spoke. I was wrong about you, son. I judged you too early. Adam looked at him and said respectfully, "You are not alone. Most of this room did. But I am not here for an apology. I am here so you all know that what you throw away does not always stay broken. Sometimes it rises higher than you ever imagined." I held Adam's hand under the table, and for the first time in years, I felt the silence in that room turn into something else. Not judgment, but respect, or maybe fear, because they knew they could no longer control the story. We had rewritten it, line by line, with scars and sweat, and now they had no choice but to read every word. After dinner, there was music in the garden. Lights shimmered above like stars on strings. People began to mingle, holding glasses and pretending smiles. But eyes kept glancing at Adam, some with admiration, some with quiet envy. One of his younger cousins, a boy barely 20, came and stood beside him. "I followed your business on social media," he said. "You teach your workers too, right?" Adam nodded. "Yes, I do." The boy looked down, then said quietly, "Do you think someone like me could work with you?" Adam placed a hand on his shoulder. "Come to the shop on Monday. We will see what you can do." He nodded with a grateful smile and walked away. I watched from a distance, pride swelling in my chest. Then I saw Aunt Clara and Uncle Richard standing near the wine table whispering. Their words floated just far enough for me to hear. It is embarrassing, really. They walk in here with nothing and now act like royalty. Do you think it will last? Money comes and goes, especially with people like them. I felt my heart sink, but not break, because now I knew better. They were afraid that everything they believed about worth and bloodlines was wrong. Adam joined me and asked what did they say. I shook my head and whispered, "It does not matter." He looked around the garden, filled with the people who once made him feel small, and he said softly, "You know, the richer they are, the emptier they seem." We stood there for a moment, watching lights flicker. Then suddenly Mr. Harold approached us. He held a glass of water, not wine, and his hands trembled just a little. I wanted to say something, he said. Adam nodded, slowly, waiting. Mr. Harold continued, "I was a hard man to please, even with my own sons. But what you built, that came from strength I never taught you. I see that now." Adam stayed quiet, his silence louder than any reply. Mr. Harold sighed and walked away. There was no embrace, no grand speech, but something had shifted. That night when we got into our car and drove home, I turned to Adam and said, "Do you feel it?" He nodded. Yes, the mountain we carried on our back. We are now standing on top of it. The following week, the shop was busier than ever. New clients arrived every day. Some came because they heard of Adam's work ethics, others because they were inspired by his story. But one day, a black luxury car stopped in front of the garage. Adam wiped his hands and walked out to greet the visitor. To his surprise, it was his brother Mark, the one who once laughed at our motorcycle, the one who toasted to leaving people like us behind. Mark stepped out, wearing a sharp suit and sunglasses. He looked around the shop with a stiff smile. "Adam," he said with a voice that tried to sound warm. "It has been a while." Adam nodded. "It has." Mark glanced at the workers and the clean structure of the garage. Then he said, "You have done well. Better than we expected." Adam crossed his arms and waited. Mark shifted his weight. "I was thinking, maybe we could work together. Merge your brand with our auto company. You bring in your clients and your name. We bring in the capital." Adam smiled faintly. "I appreciate the offer, but I built this from nothing, with my own hands, and the hands of people who were once like me. I cannot give it away now." Mark laughed nervously. "Come on, Adam. This is how business works. We expand, you grow faster. Everyone wins." Adam looked him in the eye. "Not everyone, if I say yes. I lose the very soul of this place, and I promised Jenny I would never trade our soul for comfort." Mark sighed and stepped back. "Think about it. Offers like this do not come every day, Adam replied calmly. But respect does not come every day either, and I already earned that. Mark turned and left without another word. Later that evening, I brought Adam his tea. He looked at me and said, "They want what we built because they never thought we could." I nodded. That is why it matters more now than ever. To protect it, to guard it from becoming like them. He took my hand and smiled. We may still live simply. We may never own mansions or yachts, but we own something they never will. Heart that remembers, and a name we built with honor. Weeks passed, and peace became our daily rhythm. The workshop ran smoothly. Our team grew stronger, and the name Ride Rise started appearing in magazines and news stories. People began to talk about Adam as a symbol of grit, of resilience, of change. Then one morning, as we opened the shop, a familiar voice called out. It was Mr. Harold. He stood near the gate, looking older than I remembered. His suit was clean, but his shoulders were heavy. Adam walked toward him slowly. "Father, what brings you here?" Mr. Harold looked around the shop. He nodded in quiet approval. Then he said, "I have been thinking about a lot of things lately. Mistakes I made, words I should not have said, and how I treated you both." He took a deep breath. I thought status and wealth made a man worthy. But now I see, it is what he builds with his own hands. Adam stayed quiet and waited. Mr. Harold looked at me. "Jenny, you stood beside him when no one else did. I judged you without knowing your strength, and for that I am sorry." My eyes burned, but I stayed still. Sometimes silence is the loudest forgiveness. He turned back to Adam. "I do not expect things to go back to what they were, but I would like to start again, even if it is slow." Adam nodded slowly. "It is never too late to start over, but this time we start on equal ground." Mr. Harold smiled softly. "Fair enough." Before he left, he handed Adam a small envelope. Inside was a simple card. It read, "Proud of you, son." No gold, no check, just words. But those words weighed more than anything we had received from that family before. That night, Adam and I sat in our small living room, tea in hand, soft music playing in the background. And for the first time, we felt something deeper than success. Closure. He looked at me and said, "Do you think they truly understand now?" I replied, "Maybe not all of them, but they saw enough, and that is enough for us." He smiled and said, "We came here with nothing, but we are leaving this life with everything that truly matters." And I whispered back, "We were never poor. We were just unseen. Now, they see." The seasons changed, and so did the world around us. But we never forgot where we came from. Sometimes, when I passed by the old roads where we used to walk, I would see couples riding motorcycles, wearing thin jackets, holding each other tightly against the wind. And I would smile, because I remembered, not the pain, but the courage, not the hunger, but the hope. Ride Rise opened its 5th branch that year. Adam was invited to speak at events, to share his story with young people who felt left behind. He always began the same way. I was not born a businessman. I was built by humiliation, by rejection, and by a woman who refused to let go of my hand when the world tried to break it. I would sit in the back, watching him, tears quietly running down my face, because I knew every scar he carried, and I knew what it cost to turn them into light. One day, as we walked in a mall after a speaking event, we ran into Aunt Clara. She looked at us, as if unsure whether to smile or look away. She forced a small nod. "Hello, Jenny." "Hello, Adam." Adam nodded politely. Aunt Clara looked down at the floor and said, "You proved us all wrong." Adam replied gently, "We did not want to prove you wrong. We just wanted to prove ourselves right." She nodded slowly and walked away. No more insults, no more laughter, just silence, and a little shame. That night, Adam and I sat under the stars on the rooftop of our house, the city lights below us. He held my hand and said, "Do you remember the first night after the gathering? When I promised you I would rise. I smiled and nodded. I remember every word. He looked at the sky. It was never about revenge, Jenny. It was about dignity, about building something real, something that could not be touched by mockery. And I whispered, and you did it. We did it. He smiled. We are still doing it. The story did not end when they apologized. It began when we chose not to become like them. And that is what made us rich. That night, we did not toast with wine or dance in fancy halls, but we sat in peace, two souls, once broken, now whole, not because we were accepted, but because we learned that love, hard work, and belief in each other were the only things we ever needed, and that was enough. Forever!